Cley and Salthouse Marshes. For my last video of 2026's 30 Days Wild Challenge, I wanted to go somewhere special, and Cley and Salthouse Marshes on the Norfolk, UK coast certainly qualify. Under the care of the Norfolk Wildlife Trust, these marshes are a wonderful place for birdwatching and attract a wide number of wetland species, including some very rare ones. Hi, I'm Dr. Eleanor Tufnell, an environmental scientist. And in this video, I shall take you through my walk off the Cley Marshes. We'll start at the Visitors Centre, follow the path along a small canal, travel along the wooden walkways across the vast reed bed, and watch from a height as many wonderful birds go about their business in the wide open marshes. Along the way, I'll tell you all about the wildlife I encountered, particularly as these change with each section of the walk. My walk was about 1 kilometre each way, but the reserve and surrounding area feature a number of accessible walking trails of different lengths through the marshes, village, or along the beach. So grab some sunscreen and a wide-brimmed hat and join me on my marshland adventure. Around the Visitors Centre. It's a stunning, warm day in mid-June, and we start our walk at the Visitors Centre. One wouldn't expect masses of wildlife here, but even before I'd started walking, I begin to see and hear birds. As we're on the landward side of the reserve, there are a mix of wetland and garden or woodland species. From the viewing platform, I can see out over the car park, over the marsh, all the way to the sea. While they're not visible in the photos I took, there are also wind turbines out to sea there. As I was taking in the view, overhead flew a black-headed gull, reminding me just how close to the sea I was. Fluttering around me was a large, or cabbage, white butterfly. In gardens, their caterpillars have a preference for brassicas, but here on the coast they may be using sea kale instead. As I take in the view, I'm fortunate enough to hear the song of the Eurasian skylark. These iconic little birds are currently red-listed on the UK Birds of Conservation Concern list. They saw a rapid decline in the 1970s, with that rate only slowing in the mid-1980s. The decrease seems to be most severe in Northern Ireland and eastern England, though they still did well in Scotland. Across Europe, they also seem to have been in decline since the 1980s, though recent years have seen an increase in their numbers, which is encouraging. They prefer moorland, bogs, arable land, grassland, marsh and reed beds. The area around the Cley Marshes seem excellent for them. Before I left the Visitors Centre, I heard 2 more birds, both finches, the goldfinch and the linnet. The goldfinch is thankfully doing well and are on the UK's green list, with their numbers increasing in recent years. They prefer villages, reed beds and pasture. The linnet, however, is red-listed like the skylark. Their UK population has fallen by around 57% between 1970 and 2014. The rate of decline has slowed in recent years, but has not reversed. Like the skylark, the linnet's troubles are believed to be due to nesting failure as the result of agricultural intensification. Their preferred habitats are coastal, arable, villages and reed beds. So far, we've largely seen birds that are associated with gardens and farmland. Let's see how that changes as we move further into the marsh. Canal. The walk to the entrance of the marshes takes me along a narrow canal. Though the area as a whole is natural, I believe this channel is man-made, and judging by the map, it runs the length of the landward side of the marshes, and seems to loop around much of the seaward side too. I'm delighted to find a little burnet moth resting on the path ahead of me. But sadly, as I get close enough to try to identify it, it flies away. So I can't tell you precisely which one it was. A little further along, I see my next water bird, the moorhen. These birds are black-ish, and have a beak that is red and yellow. They can be shy and may try to disappear when spotted. Watch for the white undertails flick as they make their escape. Moorhen are common around the UK, and there are no recorded changes in breeding bird populations. However, overwintering migrants from Europe have declined, and thus it is amber listed. As I make my way along the canal, I can hear some old friends, the dunnock and the common chiffchaff. Both birds are associated with village and town gardens, but can also be seen in shrub, pasture or arable land, deciduous forest, and most relevant here, reed beds. The chiffchaff is green listed, while the dunnock is amber listed. Their numbers fell substantially in the 70s and 80s, but they've seen some partial recovery since. Next up, I get to hear the western house martin, which are more strongly associated with villages, towns and pasture, though do turn up in reed beds and marshes. It is a summer migrant from Africa to the UK, and likes to nest in the eaves of buildings. They are red-listed, and while the precise reason for their decline is not well understood, we have learned that birds nesting on PVC rather than wood, concrete or brick seem to have significantly lower breeding success, as nests are more likely to collapse on PVC substrate. Another seasonal migrant from Africa that is more at home in the reed beds is the sedge warbler. Since the long flight back to Africa is an arduous one, in early autumn they often gather in massive numbers in southern coastal reed beds, where they can rest and fatten up on aphids. As I approach a small bridge, I am surrounded by a cloud of beautiful demoiselles. I'm not just being complimentary here, that is literally what they are called, and it is easy to see why. They have dark wings, but their body is a beautiful metallic blue-green colour. Easily mistaken for a dragonfly, these are actually damselflies. Dragonflies and damselflies are suborders of the same order and have some differences in things such as body shape, wing position, and wing shape. The beautiful demoiselle lives along waterways, and the males sit on nearby vegetation, waiting for females, then use their fluttering flight as a courtship display. Speaking of dragonflies, when I reached the bridge, I found several dragonfly enthusiasts observing two beautiful species of dragonfly, the four-spotted chaser and the Norfolk hawker. I'm going to take their expert word for it that these were the species present. The four-spotted chaser is common throughout much of Britain and may even be increasing in population since the 1990s. The Norfolk hawker, however, is listed as endangered on the Red List and is legally protected. Historically, it was confined to the Broads of Norfolk and some ways into Suffolk. The last few decades have seen it spread further, with sightings as far away as Yorkshire. The optimum conditions for Norfolk hawkers seem to be unspoilt grazing marshes that feature clean, non-brackish waters, with rushes and an abundance of aquatic plants. Just passing the bridge, I found a field of cows, which are here not just for their own benefit, but also in order to maintain the grazing marsh. Perhaps their presence is why the Norfolk hawker is able to thrive. Across the bridge, the real marsh begins, so I make my way along the wooden boardwalk into the sea of reeds. I'm delighted to see 3 different butterflies here: the red admiral, the meadow brown, and the star of my most popular short, the painted lady. The meadow brown prefers grassland, but the other 2 are pretty versatile and will be found in numerous biomes. Both red admirals and painted ladies use nettles as food plants for their caterpillars, among other plants, while the meadow brown caterpillars prefer to eat grasses. I briefly got sidetracked as this gorgeous beetle landed on my arm. I apologise that we didn't get better pictures, but just as my father was lining up the shot, a clegg, or horsefly, decided to take the opportunity to land on my collarbone and bite me. This, of course, caused me to flinch, and the beetle on my arm flew away. I initially believed it was a musk beetle. The one in my garden video turned out to be a swollen thigh beetle. However, due to its size, 6 to 11 millimetres long rather than the 3 to 4 centimetres of musk beetles, the length and shape of the antennae, and the fact that its elytra, the hardened wing cases, are narrow and do not quite meet in the middle, leaving a gap which shows the wing membrane underneath, I suspect that this may be a female swollen-thighed beetle. Only the males have those swollen thighs. But the picture isn't super clear, and I'm far from an expert on beetles. And there are a lot of beetles out there, so I could be wrong. Oh, and don't worry, I disinfected the clegg bite and have suffered no ill effects from it, thankfully. Next, I spotted some hogweed. Not to be confused with the giant hogweed, which is invasive. If you've watched my latest video on meadows, you may recognise these flowers as umbels. And the hogweed is indeed from the same family as the cow parsley, and is an umbellifer. The sap is less toxic than that of its giant relative, which causes nasty burns. The umbels are clusters of flowers on stalks that come from a common centre. The hogweed is hosting an army of soldier beetles, along with a variety of parasitic wasps and hoverflies, none of which stayed still long enough for me to get a good enough photo to ID them. Close by, I found the only gastropod of this series, the white-lipped painted snail. Not a surprise to find it near hogweed, as this, along with the nettles and ragwort, is one of its favourite food plants. These little snails have a shiny, smooth shell, which in this case is a creamy pink colour, though it can also be yellow, brown or red, and has up to 5 dark spiral bands on their shell. When we examined it closely, it had an obvious white lip around the opening to its shell, but we couldn't get a good photo of that, sadly. Other plants I encountered included my old friend red campion, which I talked about in my bluebells and birches and time travel at a glance videos. Here it is not acting as an indicator of ancient woodland, but is providing wonderful food source for a number of pollinators. Now for a bit of a twist, I spotted some bindweed. Given the heart-shaped leaves and the bracteoles, I believe this is hedge bindweed, though there are multiple species present in Britain, including native and invasive species, and hybridization makes identification trickier. Okay, quick botany terminology briefing. I swear this is relevant. The bracteoles are small bracts, which are a sort of modified leaf that arises at the floral axis or receptacle, which is the area of the flower to which the reproductive and ancillary organs of the flower are attached. In the hedge bindweed, the bracteoles extend under the white flower in order to support it. These are long and narrow and do not touch or overlap each other, so the sepals are somewhat visible. Sepals are the outermost part of the flower, which serve to protect and enclose the flower prior to its opening. My struggling to be certain, though, serves me as a reminder to myself that A, I should take more photos, and B, take better photos, ideally at different parts of the plant and from different angles. When learning to identify things, particularly plants, one often does not know initially which features are most vital to examine. So the more pictures I take, the better the chance I took a photo of something useful. But back to the bindweed itself. These are often considered weeds given how easily they can colonise an area and how hard they are to remove. But the leaves of the hedge bindweed are a food source for a number of beetles and caterpillars, including the caterpillar of the convolvulus hawk moth, elephant hawk moth, and rosy wave moth. The flowers are also excellent for pollinators and attract bees, butterflies, and hoverflies. The last plant I want to talk about today is the bittersweet, or woody nightshade. This is less toxic than some of the other plants within the nightshade family, but all parts are still poisonous. It has pointed oval-shaped leaves, which are a yellow-green colour. Apparently, these smell of burnt rubber when crushed, though I have not tried it. Make sure to wash your hands thoroughly afterwards if you do. The flowers are what drew my attention, however. These are a vibrant purple, and the stamens which protrude out of the flower are bright yellow. Later in the year, these will form bright red berries, and some of the plants I saw were just starting to form these. The berries are eaten by a variety of birds. Its leaves are also a food plant for the silver-washed fritillary. Now, on to the birds I encountered during my walk through the marshes. The first one I encountered was the common wood pigeon, which has managed to turn up in every one of my 30 Days Wild videos, which makes it feel incredibly ubiquitous and common, so you might wonder how it ended up listed as amber. This is a little complicated and involves a number of factors. The numbers are generally very good, but have shown a statistically significant but shallow decline over the last 5 years in England. But the criteria for listing, while including population trends and distribution, also includes other factors such as a species rarity in the UK, Europe or the global red list status, so the species might be common in Britain but rare elsewhere in Europe, and most relevant for wood pigeons, what proportion of the European population breeds or overwinters in the UK. Because by volume we have over 20% of the European breeding population of wood pigeons, they're listed as amber. Next up, I heard some meadow pipits. They're also amber listed, due to the downward trend in their population since the 1970s. As the name suggests, one of their preferred habitats is grassland, but they also live in moors, marshes, bogs and reed beds. They'll be right at home here. Alongside them I could hear, and even see, some reed buntings, another amber-listed species. Its population trends have fluctuated since the 1980s, with some surveys showing substantial declines. As the name suggests, they thrive in reed beds, but they also inhabit a variety of habitats including bogs, marshes, shrubs and arable land. In winter, they are often found together with other bunting and finches feeding in arable fields. It is suspected that the intensification of agricultural techniques may have been behind their declines, as when these issues have at least been partially addressed, we see increases in their numbers. Last but not least of the wildlife I encountered on my walk through the marshes is the common redshank. These waders made their homes in coastal areas, marshes, reed beds and lakes. Named for their red legs, shank being an old word for leg, these birds are also amber listed, with the UK breeding population falling by 42% between 1995 and 2024. They face a number of threats: destruction and degradation of their wetland habitat, risk of predation for eggs and chicks, and extreme weather events such as storms or high tides, which might flood vital nesting sites, or a lack of spring rainfall that should reduce standing water and support insect populations. With climate change, these severe weather events are becoming more common, and so the pressures on these birds increase. Thankfully, groups like the RSPB and the Wildlife Trusts are doing a lot to help protect these birds, including improving management of their habitats, which is why I was so fortunate to be able to hear these birds during my visit. The hide. The hides are lovely little thatched barns that look out over pools or scrapes, which are designed and managed to attract breeding and passing water bird species. A scrape, by the way, is a shallow pond, usually less than a metre deep. It holds rain or flood water during wetter seasons and tends to remain damp for the rest of the year. And there are a lot of birds. While I had some binoculars, I still struggled a little to identify them all. The Norfolk Wildlife Trust had helpfully put up some signs to help with identification, but I found the sheer number of species overwhelming. I counted 12 distinct species I could be reasonably confident of, either by my own identification or thanks to one of the many birdwatching enthusiasts who pointed them out to me. I sadly don't have time to tell you about all of these in detail, but I shall try to give you the highlights. The species I needed no help identifying was the barn swallow, or just swallow, here. As the name suggests, they often build nests in barns, sheds and outbuildings, which is how I met them, as they had decided that the hides would make perfect nesting sites. They came and went throughout my time there, dropping off food for their babies and occasionally squabbling with fledglings. I'm sorry, my photos don't really do these birds justice. Close up, the back of their head and back are iridescent blue, and their faces shimmer copper. They have pale cream-coloured undersides with a dark band at the top of the chest. Their tails are distinctive, long and forked, with thin streamers, which apparently the females select for when choosing mates. These birds are summer visitors to the UK, arriving in March and leaving for Africa around October. No Monty Python jokes, please. I also heard the closely related sand martin or bank swallow. These little birds are grey-brown and do not have the white rump that you would see on a house martin. Their underside is white and they have brown band across the chests. They're smaller than the barn swallow and slimmer than the house martin. Like the barn swallow, they are summer migrants to the UK, but arrive earlier, early March, and leave earlier, early September. They are green-listed. Pied, or white wagtails, and the Eurasian wren, both birds associated with gardens and pastures, but they can also be at home in reed beds, so it wasn't too big of a surprise to hear them here. The white and pied wagtails are subspecies, with the pied wagtail being native to and resident in Britain, while the white wagtail is more of a passing migrant to the UK. The British Isles hold nearly the entire world's population of pied wagtail. While grabbing a drink from my thermos of ice water, I hear the common or greater whitethroat. These warblers inhabit a variety of habitats, including grassland and woodland, but are particularly fond of reed beds. I heard a commotion on the water and saw a common shelduck chasing a female mallard and her ducklings, while a bemused mute swan looked on. I have no idea what caused this dispute, but after chasing the mallard and ducklings around for a while, the shelduck seemed to decide they were far enough away now and went back to foraging for food. While scanning the pools and scrapes, I also caught sight of a number of wading birds. The ones I could identify with reasonable certainty were the amber-listed oystercatcher and pied avocet, and the red-listed lapwing. All of these birds have had their struggles. I'm particularly fond of the avocet, as I was in avocet class in my primary school, which named different classes after birds. My father noted that when he was a boy, they were extremely rare, and he remembers visiting a reserve in Norfolk as a kid to see them, because it was one of the few places in the country you could actually find them. It was a long time ago, so he doesn't remember which reserve it was, but avocets had been extinct as breeding birds in the UK until they recolonised in Suffolk in 1947, and since then they have spread west and north with the help of intensive protection. Oystercatchers have seen a decrease in their population between 1995 and 2024 of 23%. Lapwing numbers have declined by 55% since the 1960s, and like many birds featured in this video, it is believed to be due to the intensification of agriculture. The RSPB is working with farmers to help protect and maintain lapwing nesting sites. All three species of these wading birds rely on well-maintained habitat, particularly wetland, for their survival. As I left the hide, I saw a grey heron being mobbed by angry avocets. Now, I can't say for certain what happened here, but along with fish, amphibians, and small rodents, grey herons will also take small birds, like ducklings, or in this case, avocet chicks. Mobbing behaviour is where typically smaller animals target a larger threat and rely on numbers and persistence to drive off that threat. This is usually a coordinated effort between the mobbing creatures and can comprise of alarm calls, swooping or dive bombing at the target, physical attacks such as pecking or scratching, and they may even poop on the predator. So it's quite possible the avocets were chasing it off to protect their own nests, or on general principle. Conclusion. As we walk back from the hide, I hope you enjoyed taking this little adventure with me. Cley Marshes is a truly beautiful place, with so many plants, invertebrates, and above all, birds. If you're in that part of the country, I do heartily recommend a visit. Entrance is free to Norfolk Wildlife Trust members, and it was £5 for non-members when I visited. Aside from assistance dogs, dogs aren't allowed in the visitor centre or the marsh itself. They are, however, permitted along the outer paths of the reserve, but must be kept on leads at all times. So this concludes this year's 30 Days Wild long-form videos. I hope you enjoyed this format. I will be back to more wide-ranging video themes going forward, but if these come with me on an adventure style videos do well, I will probably keep them in rotation. I know I've enjoyed this experience and I hope you did too. Please let the algorithm know by liking, commenting, subscribing and sharing this video with anyone you think might find it interesting. As always, there's a library of links in the description if you want to learn more about any given topic. So until next time, thank you for watching.